The interesting thing about anastrozole is that it actually acts as an estrogen agonist in some tissues, and it blocks the progesterone receptor as well.
Interesting. There's something about dropping it too low or dropping it too quickly. If you want to lower it, you kind of want to gradually lower it by doing health optimization, among other things.
If people are going, look, I have to drop my dose to be able to tolerate it, as long as you feel fantastic, perfect. The lower dose is for you, awesome. Keep it the lower dose.
Yeah. So there's something to say about continuously inhibiting aromatase, which, by the way, you need for libido in the brain, that causes, like, some sort of excess of this, of this bone mineral, dynamic change in the acute period and ongoingly if you're taking it. Whereas, if you drop the estradiol naturally, if you figure out a way, whether it's lowering your TRT dose, getting on some DHT cream, getting on test cream, maybe getting on a short acting or fast acting ester, you just don't have the joint pain. So I understand, especially Danny's perspective on AIs. They're shitty drugs to take. I mean, nobody, wants to have to rely on first a secondary drug. You're on TRT, you're on HCG, now you got to take this cancer drug, basically. The stuff is just entirely too strong.
Yeah, and all the AIs are bad because they're all just bad differently. So like letrozole crosses the blood-brain barrier, so it's potentially neurotoxic. The interesting thing about anastrozole is that it actually acts as an estrogen agonist in some tissues, and it blocks the progesterone receptor as well.
Interesting. I did not know that.
And like the thing that I've found, and it sounds like you've experienced too, is that anastrozole, independent of the reduction in serum estradiol, just makes people feel shit. Like it's just a shitty drug. It has an anti-nootropic effect.
Right. Yeah. There's something about dropping it too low or dropping it too quickly. Like there's all these dynamics that haven't really been studied, and dropping the estradiol too quickly in a very unnatural way, tends to almost starve tissues of estradiol, which you don't want. If you want to lower it, you kind of want to gradually lower it by doing health optimization, among other things. The one thing that I found, like, relative to the side effects with larger dose AIs, or at least dropping estradiol quickly, is that if I run, I call it 0.25 milligrams of anastrozole or more, I lose libido for 2 days. And typically there's a little bit of joint pain associated with that and some cognitive issues, right? It's not significant to the point where I can't do work or whatever, but it's noticeable. And I notice every fucking change, like in my brain. Alternatively, though, if I dose between 0.06 and 0.09 milligrams of anastrozole, I do not get side effects. Boners come right back if I've had elevated estradiol, and that is good. So, for people in the interim that are trying to figure out how to either get at their TRT dose straight so that they don't aromatize a lot, or, look at their liver issues, thyroid issues, maybe get on cream or whatever, microdosing anastrozole tends to work so long as it's not past that threshold, because that line on estradiol is so finite. It seems to be so finite for some guys. And, in between, even me, like I'm pretty optimized, right? I get organ scans, I get fucking liver enzymes tested, every blood marker under the sun, including thyroid hormones, they're all in a great place. And still, if I'm above 130 milligrams a week of testosterone with even about 1,000 IU/HCG a week, I need a little bit of aromatase control, despite my best efforts to do everything otherwise. And so, guys out there watching, like if you're in between in this topic, like very, very small doses. I mean, you'd have to get a 0.125 milligram tablet, split it in half again, which obviously is a pain in the ass to do that. In the meantime, until ultimately you end up lowering your dose. Like, look, I just announced on my channel like last week or so, I'm now heading on week 2 of a testosterone enanthate protocol of 112 milligrams a week. That's not high, right? I mean, I've been on 200, I've been on 210, I've been on 170, 150, 140, whatever. And ultimately, lower doses of longer esters, my estradiol falls in range and I don't have to do anything at all. I don't have to take an II. I definitely won't have to take an II on this protocol. And so maybe that's the solution for guys. But, people always worry about in that particular case, are they still getting therapeutic benefits of testosterone? I am. My gym sessions are great. I feel great. My cardio is great. I'm generally pretty awesome. But what would you say to guys that, are afraid to lower their dose, basically?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And sometimes what I've found, and I mentioned this in my book, and I did a lecture for Marek on this recently, where I talked about my stance on HCG, is that, that there are some guys who are in this tricky predicament, which is going, if I don't take HCG, I don't need
no
AI.
libido, right.
Testosterone monotherapy is fine, but I get some form of sexual dysfunction of some kind. Weak orgasms, no semen, no libido. Just it's like their dick is like a gummy worm. Like heard it all. But they don't get the estrogen problems, and then they go on HCG, and then they restore all these sexual issues. But then now they're going, well, now I need to take an aromatase inhibitor, otherwise I get these psychological estrogenic side effects. And that's a tricky predicament for guys to be in. And I guess it puts guys into a scenario being like I personally believe that if HCG was like, if we were talking about bioidentical luteinizing hormone, like if we were using an esterized luteinizing hormone, I don't think it would be a problem. I think the differentiation between, I think HCG is inherently feminizing. And I think that if someone's in that kind of scenario being like, to tolerate HCG, I need a little bit of an AI, to me, that makes sense. And then I guess the question is going, well, do you want to do the testosterone thing and see if that underlying, because this is the other thing that I found, is that I have absolutely met some guys who need HCG, like they need it, like without it, it's just a no go. But I've also met a bunch of guys who thought they needed HCG, but then when we actually looked at their blood work, they were hypothyroid. Or they had liver issues, or there was something underneath that potentially the HCG, we know HCG upregulates cyclic AMP, so it's, positive for the metabolism. So maybe some guys who are hypothyroid, they find that HCG supports them. Like I think sometimes HCG can be acting as a band-aid in that scenario, which again, root cause investigation, but there's absolutely guys who need it. So it's tricky. So I think if someone's concerned about lowering the TRT dose and going, okay, well, I want to get the maximal benefits of testosterone, the complete, it's kind of like if it fits your macros, it's it's as long as it fits your calories, but the end part of that was meant to be for 20% of your calories, 80% is meant to be whole healthy food. People just drop that part off. So when it comes to this one, the part that I think is important to look at when it comes to the HCG TRT side of things is getting to see if there is a root cause underneath of why the HCG is needed. And then if it's not, looking at your testosterone levels and being like, okay, do I need to max this out and take this through the roof to get to the benefit? Or is the complete part of that sentence meant to be, you take the most testosterone that you can tolerate? And a big important point for this is that, again, let's say we use an example of someone who's obese, who's not doing well, whose health has gone to shit. That guy who they are now might only be able to tolerate 100 milligrams a week. Or 110 milligrams a week. But if he got to 15% body fat, dropped all his vices, and he was the guy who did that for 6 months, maybe he could tolerate a higher testosterone level. And I guess the question that people have to look at in the interim is going, well, do I put the high end testosterone dose I'm not tolerating and then use an AI so that I tolerate it? Or do I listen to my body, drop the dose down, and then be able to work up so that I can tolerate a higher dose and kind of use that as an incentive?
Your perspective on, over time, either via constant androgenization or, there's a word for that. Derek from MPMD uses it, but just like, the androgenic effects over time, making positive changes, people may be able to tolerate higher doses as they go on. Could be something to, could be a route for people to take. Let's jump back on HCG. I've heard you say that HCG messes with your libido. Do you attribute that to elevations in estradiol, or do you attribute it to some other things? HCG stimulates the baby's immune system, from the mother. So there's probably some immunogenic thing happening there. It obviously is making you make some more DHA pregnenolone, and those have neurosteroid basically neurologically modulating properties to them. Why do you think HCG messes with your libido? And then why do you think it messes with other people's libido? Because it certainly can. Me, past a certain range with HCG, it'll mess with erections. Libido will be okay, but it'll certainly mess with erections.
The one thing that I haven't been able to find a trend for is if we take, 10 guys who don't tolerate HCG, 10 who are just neutral to it, and 10 who get amazing benefits from it. I have not been able to find what each of those groups of guys has in common. I haven't been able to find it. It pisses me off.
Interesting.
So my theories are, again, looking at HCG as a female pregnancy hormone. And again, I know that men make it in microscopic amounts, but in that dose, it's not bioidentical. So maybe in some guys, depending on how our immune system is genetically wired, maybe we have like an autoimmune response to it, and it elevates stress hormones and it elevates cortisol, prolactin, and suppresses libido.
Could be.
Or it is inherently feminizing. I've tried, if you look at some studies, there's studies showing that 5 units of HCG every second day still stimulates the testicles a little bit. So I was like, maybe we're hypersensitive to it. Maybe, maybe it's like caffeine, right? Maybe, it's like I need to take the green tea of HCG. Nope, still fucked me up. So I also think that it's inherently feminizing. I think it's inherently estrogenic.
Right.
That's what I feel when I take it. I feel the opposite of how I would feel when I take Proviron when I take HCG. Personally.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I ran a small cycle of Proviron. I was ultimately unable to tolerate it because I think the dose was too high in conjunction with my TRT dose. But I know that feeling. It's fucking totally different. For me, HCG really doesn't do that so long as estradiol is under control. And really, without other compounds to try to control estradiol, it's really about me having a lower end testosterone dose, which I'm still anabolic. I'm fucking shredding at the gym. I feel great. And that just may be the solution for a lot of guys. It's like I'm in great shape. All my health markers are pretty awesome. I do not drink alcohol, like never. Like I'll take a fucking sip of my date's margarita and that's it. I don't smoke pot. And still though, like at 150 milligrams testosterone with like 1,000 IU HCG a week, I definitely aromatize past the point where my body likes, especially relative to sexual function. So it might just be the case that some guys need to go down in dose. And if you go on the testosterone subreddit, which is a good place to get information and also is a good place to get confused, you're going to find a lot of people, like a larger than a small little sample size, that have reduced their dose to between 80 and 120 milligrams. And now they're fucking perfectly dialed in.
Yeah. And I think that it's great when people can come around from the viewpoint that they're just going to out testosterone their problem. I think a lot of people try to use testosterone as if it's some kind of like masculinizing injectable Adderall, that they're just going to keep, they up their dose, they honeymoon period because it's dopaminergic, and then they just keep upping it, and they end up just with like cranked out central nervous system, and they don't recover properly and just fucks.
Yeah, that's a terrible state.
Yeah. So I think if, when I've looked at people who've had, the thing that I found interesting when it comes to estrogen, and again, in defense of my more dogmatic friends, I have not found that serum estradiol level across the board, like in multiple people, correlates with estrogenic symptoms that closely. Now, obviously, if some guy's got an estrogen of like 4 times the top of the range, of course.
Yeah.
But
I
found that like, I've had guys who've got, estrogen in the middle of the range or like the top end of the range, and they've got horrific gyno and they feel terrible. And then I've got guys who've got estrogen double the top of the range and they feel fantastic.
Yeah, it's weird how there is differentiation between people for sure. I've seen guys be able to tolerate 50, 60, 70 picograms per milliliter. Usually they're on high levels of androgens. And I don't know. Maybe there's some genetic basis for how they can tolerate that. But I have seen that as well.
I guess what I've found in practice has been when I've looked at because that was the thing that really bothered me in terms of being like, well, why is this happening to some people? Like I wouldn't accept that it was some kind of hard set genetic thing, maybe an epigenetic thing for sure. Like, increased feminized expression of genes from growing up hypergonadal, 100%. Yeah. But when I was looking at it from this other angle, I was like, well, what do these people all have in common who are having these problems? And when I looked at it, A1C was the biggest one. HbA1c was the biggest determining factor of who was getting these estrogenic side effects.
Interesting.
And my friend Jay Campbell's been harping on about this for ages, that the root cause of these estrogenic side effects is insulin resistance. And the thing that I found, the most common, and when I'm mentoring people on this is the thing that I get them to look out for, is that when people have got these estrogenic symptoms, they tend to have this concert elevation of cortisol, prolactin, and estrogen. Like I haven't found that when guys who are starting TRT and they get these like brutal side effects and they just can't tolerate it at all, I always find that prolactin's massively elevated. I always find the cortisol's elevated, and a lot of the time TSH is elevated too. So I think that, if people are going, look, I have to drop my dose to be able to tolerate it, as long as you feel fantastic, perfect. The lower dose is for you, awesome. Keep it the lower dose. Yeah. But if people are dropping their dose and being like, well, I've gotten rid of my side effects, but now I've lost all the benefits, that's when you have to go, okay, why aren't you tolerating the dose that you need?
Yes. But you got to look at that for sure. Definitely. Yeah.
I think that some people absolutely just have more sensitive androgen receptors than other people, and some people have way blunter receptors. And like, some guys need to be double the top of the range or even a bit higher, and some guys need to stay in the top quartile of the range, and any higher and they just get side effects. I think when it comes to testosterone, you want to get the optimal
benefits of testosterone, and testosterone will continue to become more optimal for you until you take too much. There's not a lot that's changed in injectable dosing for testosterone in the last few years. It puts most people in a ballpark,
Yeah.
but it's not right. So the thing that blew me away at the Olympia, like I've been in an echo chamber for a long time of people who are